7 to, I don't know, noon. So I will be releasing the quiz, okay? And if anyone is traveling or anything like that, don't worry, it's just an MCQ, so try to respond. Otherwise, respond it in your own time. So that's the thing for quiz. And for presentations, I've already released what is expected in the presentation. And I will shortly be releasing the sequence and the peer review group pairing. So give me some time for that. And yeah, we will be starting it from next week. So I will develop a schedule after consulting Pushkar again. So I'll let you know that soon. All right. So with that, we will start with today's lecture on software testing. So if you can confirm if the screen is visible to all of you. Okay, thank you. All right. So moving on to another important, phase of the soft. Okay, sorry. Sure. So moving on to another important phase of software development life cycle, we talk about software testing this week, and so the importance of software testing and using a couple of examples and also graphs. I will try to show you not only the importance of testing, but the importance of doing testing in the right way, in the right approach, and at the right time. So these are some important things that we will discuss on as we move uh, forward in the software testing lectures. So first of all, what is the objective of testing a system? Basically, on a broad level, you are trying to identify defects existing in the software, and basically then remove them and achieve a error-free operation. Uh, Testing definitely, because you are developing something for the end user or the stakeholder. You cannot afford to release any project or even submit it unless and until you have tested it thoroughly. And inadequate testing or absence of testing altogether could lead to errors which may not appear until months later. So that is why testing ideally should not be a one-time activity. You should, whenever you develop something, so if you already developed n modules and then you are developing n plus one module, so ideally you should check that the system is still working. Even the new function is working, that is fine, but the old system is also working after the new functionality has been integrated. So there's a lot of common sense that operates when we are trying to test our system, even during when we are developing it or building it. So that is why in your final presentations also, I wanted to understand what kind of testing approach at least you plan to follow or you have been following, as some of you have been developing certain independent modules. So just wanted to understand what is the uh, thought process behind how you have included testing, and of course you can think over it more as we proceed through these lectures. So the problem related to inadequate testing or not so good testing is that the time lag between the cause and the appearance of the problem. So if you are just focusing on developing and not just testing, and if certain error seems to creep up, which may not be a runtime error but a semantic error, and the output that your system is giving is not quite what is expected, then you won't be able to find it until at the very end of the entire system testing, wherein you are doing acceptance testing. So that is why greater the time lag, greater will be the efforts required for you to rectify that problem. So why do you think that the greater the time lag between the cause and appearance of the problem, what is the role that time has to play in this, according to you? So remember we talked about a priority of the issues as well. So if a normally when a high priority issue comes, it's not difficult to not see it. However, in terms of semantic errors, especially when your system is trying to do something, but it is doing some number crunching or something like that, but it's showing a incorrect output, and so that is why these things are very important. So if you really want that time does not play a spoil sport, then your test strategy should be like you are at par with the system that you are developing. So as and when your system is moving ahead, somewhere around the testing is also happening in some or the other manner. So do you remember any kind of software development lifecycle model which had a similar theory like this?
Can you please repeat, ma'am?
So I'm saying that normally when you're trying to develop a system, and if you think of testing, also it's some modules that are working on concurrently. So if it happened concurrently, can you think of any software development lifecycle model that you have studied that had a approach similar to this? So
V model,
yes,
V model approach.
V model. So what was happening in the V model?
I mean, every input has corresponding check with it. So, I mean, they both happen concurrently.
Yeah. So every phase was sort of having, a sort of validation phase in which requirements gathering, design and analysis, and even coding and implementation. So this is not exactly similar, but almost similar, because the general principle remains the same, that you are doing it concurrently and just ensuring that whatever you are developing is functioning quite well. So that is one of the things that might not happen if your testing strategy is inadequate, or you are only focused on creating some functional system without having tested it properly. So that is why we really need to understand testing. And to keep this in perspective, let us try to look at some of the examples of tragic software failures in history. But before that, as you can see on your screens, software failures in the US cost the economy $1.1 trillion in assets in 2016. What is more, not only the money was lost, but it impacted 4.4 billion customers. Software failures alone. So, what do these figures reflect? What do you immediately tell to yourself when you read something like this? Are the numbers uh, significant, or they can just be ignored?
The numbers are quite big.
Your voice is breaking, Tarun.
The numbers are quite big, not so ignorable.
So you see, immediately software testing comes into perspective. It's another story to talk about software testing and importance of testing and how to build up test strategies, master plans, and everything. What are the best practices to do unit testing, system testing, and integration testing? But it's altogether a different thing if you really see how lack of testing or poor testing actually metamorphoses into what are the costs of inadequate testing or poor testing, and until much later when the device has been given to the customer, what is the cost associated with that kind of software failure. So that is why even when you are working on a already developed product, or you are trying to create something from scratch, these are some things that you must keep into mind. This reminds me of one of my colleagues back in my previous company, in which in his free time he would explore the product or services on his own, whatever we were working on at that moment. So he would familiarize him with the things that were working fine, which were not working fine. I mean, that was his level of dedication and commitment at which he was working, and it was Definitely one of the greatest, software developers I had seen. And again, he would find the issues, then he would discuss it with tester and his manager, and then again try to, do something about it. Because he knew that testing really never stops. It is something that always going on, and no software is, glitch free. So there all kind of errors come into picture. So let us try to look at some of the famous software failures in the history. So Nissan, an automobile company, it had to recall over 1 million cars thanks to a software glitch in the airbag sensory detectors. Now, million cars is not a small number, and the company is also quite famous. So, what exactly the company lost, and how difficult it would have been for the company to recall, the already manufactured cars? What do you think of this software failure? So one thing immediately becomes apparent that software failures are very common.
Very, very complicated, very life-taking and risky. I mean, they can become very
They can become very,
risky. I mean, human life-taking.
yeah. So the reputation of the company is lost. The
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Your mic is mute now.
so I'm saying that the company lost its reputation, it lost its money, and obviously lost the trust. And notice the word software glitch. So now you can at least put in context, the responsibility that comes up with being a software developer or software engineer in the larger scheme of things. A small thing can quickly replicate into a much bigger failure. A small defect observed at developer's end, found at tester's end becomes a bug, and then if it's not resolved, it becomes a software fault, and ultimately in the customer hands becomes a failure. Let us look at another example. So Apple, quite a customer company in which people really have a lot of trust in that brand, I would say. But in September 2014, they launched some iOS update and then had to pull out it, only after a few hours of its release. So again, the idea is, so first of all, to normalize the conversation around software testing. Uh, there's nothing to feel embarrassed about, even though it happens, you know, uh, it is very difficult to take in when failures happen at such a large scale. It can be extremely embarrassing when it happens in our own projects also. But uh, no failures is not a situation that really happens. So, but it can be minimized, it can be better managed, and that was one of the questions in the essays that I had asked, that how the software practices in last 2 decades have evolved, which have led to better software development and better management of software failures. Because failures are here to stay, they will never go. But we can become better at how we are understanding the entire process of software development, right from feasibility study to maintenance. So there's still something we can do about it, and that requires aggressive level of testing. Another example is that another firm had to recall around 2 million vehicles worldwide due to a programming error. You must I have highlighted these specific phrases to actually see it in your mind that at surface it might not look big, but a slight software glitch, a slight programming error here and there, even when even with software update, so these things can really assume a lot of monetary loss for a company, not to forget the reputation also, and also of the team that is working on. And with Flipkart, often again with billion days coming, uh, they would have, they would try to better manage the sudden crowd that comes upon your website. But even there's something called as Black Friday. You must read about it. It is also a software failure. And so lastly, and one of the classic examples often given is that in 1996, a software bug in the bank software application caused the bank accounts of 823 customers of a US bank to be credited with around 920 million US dollars. So it's not a small amount by any fortune, but you see, we are all surrounded by software failures. They are happening around us all the time. Even when we are working in our local system or local project, they keep on happening. So the first thing to always remember is we cannot run away from software failures or softwares going down. So on that note, we can sort of breathe fully that okay, this is the reality, but what can I do to fail better and test better? So that is something we, as an attitude of a software developer, it should be like this. The errors are they are inevitable. They will almost always happen. First thing is not to feel embarrassed about it. And if anyone makes you feel embarrassed about it, maybe they have not done a lot of software failures. But someone who is experienced wouldn't really make you feel anything less than capable in engineering a software or developing software. But there is something that we can still learn from these failures, and if we look at it in perspective, we can understand how to go about you know in our own projects or on the projects that we are working, how to have that kind of attitude and strategy to test the system or service that we are working on. So that is why from the evidence, now we again talk about the objective of system testing. You know, small errors can explode into much larger problems unless you test it, and until very later, if you recognize it right before the production stage, it will literally create a havoc in the entire team, and the release date will get postponed, and all these kind of things happen. Moreover, effective testing early in the process almost always helps you in long-term cost savings, and also the time, and not to forget the stress also. There's a direct relationship between quality of mental health of developers and the productivity. And so if it's not managed properly, then definitely it will creep up into the the way they are sort of doing whatever they are doing in the software development part. So that is why system testing strategy is more important. How you are going to break down your software in such a way, or how you are going to plan the testing while you are developing it, so that we talked about defensive programming. Similarly, being defensive in while developing also. So defensive development in which you are testing and creating, and but obviously in a situation in which you're sort of able to create the balance. So too much testing can also cause your timelines to shift, and that is also not so good. Then important for ensuring customer satisfaction and reliability. Again, this is something called as the quality assurance. Okay, so if a product is not sufficiently tested, then definitely it will be reflected when the customers are using it. And moreover, there are business costs associated with not testing a system thoroughly and overall quality of it. So these things are there. But even as a software developer, I would say you would always learn from developing and coding. You will also learn from if you'll learn greatly if you teach yourself how to test what you are developing. I think that will give you a better perspective on your product. In fact, recently I was asked to write something related to software development, and in that I took an example of students doing their projects during their graduation years, and sort of closing them, uploading them on GitHub, and writing about it on your CV, and then never looking back at those projects again. I think after you have presented your work, you have submitted the report, you have uploaded your code to GitHub and mentioned about that in your resume, I think now that everything is done, go back to your projects, this time with a fresh look, and then try to learn what could have been done better. When we keep on working on one particular problem, we learn about quality. Similarly, in research, we talk about quality research about versus quantity of research. When we really work on a problem for an extended period of time, we can learn much more. Okay, so even after you make your presentations for this particular module, try not to keep it in the cupboard forever. Okay, revisit it and this time with a fresh look, and then try to assimilate your learning, because this time obviously you don't have anything to lose but a lot to gain. So that is why I will reiterate the fact that uh, coding, implementation, and testing is something that you can really learn after you have submitted your presentations. Let us look at this particular plot. It's a 2D graph. So its x-axis is progress, and y-axis is amount of hours spent in work, and you can see two lines. Who is going to interpret this?
Testing each step, we can assert that the previous step is correct and we can move linearly, or else our progress will be stagnant for most of the time. I mean, we work so much, but the progress will be so less, or it won't upgrade from the previous step without tests. Because when we create something, we'll create a loop in it, and we'll get into the loop. We'll create another loop, and we'll get stuck in the same loop, and we don't make much of progress. If we test the previous step, which is clear, so that we can go to the next step. Asserting that the previous step is clear, so that we can move continuously forward and increase the progress.
Okay, thank you, Tarun. So notice that when you are just beginning to develop your software, okay, when the progress is not so much, and if you move with an approach which is sort of code and fix model, or maybe you are not fixing, you are just coding, you are just testing. So maybe the time that is you are spending to achieve that particular level of progress without test is much less than that strategy in which you are proceeding or making progress with test. So here you can see notably the difference is quite big. But as and when you continue to progress in the development of your software, this difference tends to decrease at a certain point, when we call this inflection point, and after that it just rises exponentially. So this seems to be a not so bad approach when you are just beginning to write something, but as you proceed, this approach in which you are sort of making progress without any tangible tests can quickly convert into more hours spent for doing the same task. So after this point, to achieve the same level of progress, so if I were to sort of put some marker here and measure the amount of hours spent with test and without test, then you can easily see that when you move beyond a certain point and try to maintain the same progress without test, you will have to spend much more hours than you would with test. So that means, in the hindsight, making progress while regularly testing is a smart move and also a cost effective and time efficient move, because the costs associated, the gain that you accrue while developing a software without testing in the beginning will become, you know, a great disadvantage as you progress with the development of your software. So you see the two lines here with test without test. Anyone can tell me how the graph would look like if I ask you to introduce a curve for with bad tests. So if there are three categories, one is without test, one is with test. What would happen to number of work hours spent if you are testing but you are doing bad testing? So how would this graph look like?
Can you explain what is backtesting?
Okay, so bad testing means that it is not helping you really see what is wrong with the system. You are not able to, detect any error or something
Okay.
like that, or your
You're
testing is not
saying
planned.
bad testing.
Bad testing.
Bad.
Bad
Oh,
testing. Yeah.
I heard it like back testing. I thought it's some kind of new test.
No, so improper testing,
Uh,
shall we say?
yes, ma'am.
Improper testing.
Uh,
So how do you think that line of improper testing would go? How would it look like?
uh, it would, in the mind of the writer of the test or the person who is doing progress, it looks like the with test curve, and actually it goes worse than the without test curve.
Okay.
That's what
Okay.
I may be not sure.
So, okay, so maybe the disadvantage with the bad tests, you might still perform better than without tests, but much less better than with tests. So there is a trade-off. So again, testing is not enough. Uh, Obviously it's better than not testing at all, but again, the quality of testing, and that is why we talk about master plan for creating, plan for testing. So because you see when you are making progress in the system, and you often come across certain things that you need to change. So a lot of testing is going on, a lot of code refactoring is going on, a lot of code rewriting is going on. So there's something called as software entropy that gets introduced. Entropy, you must have studied in chemistry. It's more related to chaos in the system. So, the explanation behind this graph is that as time goes by, you have to put in more hours to make the same progress you showed in the beginning. Okay, so now you are working much more hard to maintain that same level of progress because you have been approaching your system and making it progress without tests. So eventually what will happen is that this kind of approach will drag any development or progress down. So the development speed slows down significantly, even to the point where you cannot make progress whatsoever. So this phenomena of quickly decreasing development speed is also known as software entropy, and there are multiple ways to look at software entropy because when a code base is being worked on it quite aggressively and lots of changes are happening and proper testing is not being done, then it can quickly get reduced into a highly chaotic system or a highly chaotic software. In fact, spaghetti code is one of the examples of, wherein the entropy has not been managed at all. So remember this graph, even in future, that the advantages that you accrue with rapid coding quickly will decrease as the project really proceeds. So that is why it is prudent to have, would have heard about the race between the tortoise and the rabbit. So, not asking you to be tortoise, but at least be pragmatic of the fact that if you're really creating something from scratch, then the responsibility is totally on you and your team, how you go about it and testing. So, that is why uh, concurrent testing or testing while development is a intelligent move, I would say. So I've talked about software testing, okay, and we have talked about errors in software. There are four terms that often are used interchangeably. So there's something called as bug, and there's something called as error. There's something called as defect, and there's something called as fault. So what is the difference? Do you feel is between these terms? Because when we talk about software testing, someone says we are doing software testing to identify bugs, to identify defects, to identify faults, failures in the system, and a lot of these terms are thrown carelessly around. So what do you think is the difference between error, mistake, defect, fault, bug, and failure? So usage of the right word is important. Normally each of the defect, fault, or bug or failure is basically a type of error, and it can lead to a defect, bug, and if it's not solved, it leads to a software failure, and also called as the software fault. You must have talked about or listened about software fault tolerance systems. So that is what we are talking about. So just to briefly touch upon these things, a defect is something, a bug which is introduced at programmer side inside the code is called as defect. So the developer can, you know, rectify the defect. Defect is mainly the deviation from the actual and expected result of the application of software. So if your system is not working in expected manner and you are the developer and you spot that error or mistake, then at your end it becomes a defect and you can correct it by yourself in the development phase. When by the time it goes to the tester and that defect has not been really rectified, but there is a mismatch between expected and the actual output, then the tester would call it a bug and then raise it, and the developer will be assigned it. So any mismatch in the application or system in the testing phase uh, is called as the bug. Now, since you are working on your projects, you are the developers and you are the testers. So in this kind of situation, maybe defect and bug might not be too different. But in large corporations, there is this entire team, software testing and quality assurance team, that does that. Fault, on the other hand, is a incorrect, step or process or data definition in a software product. So fault can sometimes lead to a bug also, but fault generally relates to some problem in the decision making while coding the software. So some process has not been understood rightly, and that has led to a fault creeping up into the system. So sometimes the system breaks down because it was not fault tolerant. So that is what is called as fault. And ultimately, if these things have not been solved and they have been pushed into the production stage, okay, and it has landed in the hands of the customer and it is found to be there, then it is software failure, as we saw in the previous examples that I have taken from history. So ultimately, all these things which are not really solved and still the software has been introduced and launched into the market, then it assumes the shape of failure. So, so what do you think are the costs associated with not detecting defect? How does it compare with costs of not detecting a bug and cost of not detecting a failure? So, how do you think is the cost of not identifying these things proceeding from defect to bug to failure? So, as you can see that the earlier you can identify and fix it and then test the overall system also.
Error and mistake are related to the developer, and bug, defect, or fault is related to software, and failure is unable to deliver the desired thing to the customer. Uh, is it that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, that could be one way of looking at it. But again, see, every defect or bug or fault is maybe a error in programming or it's a mistake that is creeped up into the system. Now, depending on where they are detected, they are given different names. So for now, just focus on defect and bug and failure, because defect and bugs, which if not considered in the entire process, and if your software is given in the production stage, then it could be termed as a failure. For example, your presentations will be going on, and if I am the stakeholder for whom you are creating something, and obviously I don't expect you to show me a full-fledged software, but if I ask you to, can you please do this, and if the system somehow is not able to respond to that, and since you are giving sort of presentation for the system that you have developed, then it might be considered as a failure. Okay, so that is why when you're presenting, at least in the slide, say that in the demonstration, this is what we will demonstrate. Okay, because obviously it's not possible to develop everything in the short period of time, and you had other subjects also. So while presenting, it's better to say that this is the demonstration we'll give, and these are the specific functional requirements we have fulfilled. So then we can actually focus on them and try to see how it is faring. So normally now we have talked about importance of system testing and importance of software testing, and how it gets it assumes a larger disadvantage if we are trying to develop a software without testing. So there is something called as test plan. And how many of you thought SRS was a waste of plan? Anyone who thought that SRS was a waste of time?
Completely, but unnecessary adding unnecessary detail to it, which is not actually delivered, is I guess is a waste of time. I mean, as far as I understand, the
Okay.
things that we are promising to give are fine to write, and we can talk with the stakeholder. Will that be enough? Without talking to the stakeholder in a complete manner, thinking that we are giving everything, we shouldn't like keep on writing the SRS so that we can go to the further process. That's
Definitely.
what.
Okay. So since SRS is an agreement between the client and the developers, obviously the things that will be written in that, both of the parties have to abide by that. If it's not something that you really plan to do as a team, you might not include it in version 1, but in successive version, obviously as the conversation proceeds with the clients and stakeholders, you might want to develop it. But I hope if anyone felt writing SRS was a waste of time, please write to me. I would like to know your perspective. So similarly, we have something called as the test plan, you know, and test plan in which you are sort of strategizing how exactly you will test in a very neat and clear and crisp manner. Because again, if you're trying to do testing in a very random, haphazard fashion, you still might be able to test the major modules, but the 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 peculiarity about software errors is that if you don't really follow a set process, or at least some procedure that you have really thought over, before going on to testing, that it might lose your attention, and that might create a spoil sport much later. So that is why there's something called as testing plan, which is developing a sort of test plan, so that how you're going to test your system or software as you are developing it. Now, uh, there are always two views to a concept. Uh, you must know why you are doing what you are doing, because that keeps things in perspective. So, a good question is, why should we develop a test plan and it's a waste of time? A better response would be understanding why we need a test plan. So, software testing, contrary to not many undergraduate students might know, but it is a planned process, and normally it's not taught. But I think it's important to keep this in perspective, because you'll be doing multiple projects later on also in your graduation years. So, software testing is not a activity which is taken in a random fashion. Okay, you need to really plan, and the better you can plan, the better confident you are to actually get the results out of that testing. So it's something that you write in your testing strategy also. In your presentation, I will be expecting you your strategy or tactic to test the system. So it's basically a piece of communication among all the people involved in testing applications and software. It can help people outside the test team, such as developers, business managers, customers, understand the details of testing. So all the people who are interacting with that application and sort of engaged in certain manner, whether using it or testing it, all of them, the document really helps them as a common platform to really understand how to go about testing the software. And it can have specifications of the person's role during the testing, and moreover it keeps you on track. So if you have a document, like for example SRS, there might be situations when you will be going back to and fro to your SRS to check the details. So similarly for software testing, if you sort of make a plan, you can actually evaluate your software testing, and then based on that evaluation, understand that how you are progressing in testing your system. So that is why plan planning is the key word here. As much as you plan your design, your requirements gathering and their management, testing is also something which is a planned activity. And there is something called as the master test plan. If a software is big, there would be many bunch of documents inside that master test plan. So master test plan is basically uh, you know a way to communicate among the people who are associated with development, of that particular piece, that how you will go about testing. So it entirely depends on the philosophy that your team is following while developing, or what your stakeholders want, what your client wants. So but the common denominator remains that software testing is not throwing darts in the darkness. It is actually a very systematic and planned activity. So the overall plan and testing requirements, are like a baseline project plan for testing. Obviously, it can evolve over a period of time, but at least in the presentation, I would expect at least you show me the project plan, if not a timeline of testing. I mean, that should be very clear, and and you must also justify the reason you have created your software testing plan as you present, because that will reflect how you have thought about going about testing, and what are the priority things that you have thought about while creating your master testing plan. So I think software entropy I've already discussed. This is a misplaced slide. But again, a lot of testing also sometimes leads to software entropy, especially when you're going to fix the bug. And in terms of software, testing, there is something called as regression. When a feature stops working as intended after a certain event, usually after code modification. So you see, testing, debugging, code modification, these activities are happening quite common in a code base, and that is why, because of multiple code modifications, there's something called as chaos introduced in the system, which is called as the software entropy. And so that you are able to still keep your system sane even after multiple code modifications, it is not only important to debug properly, but also have a plan of testing properly, because then you can rectify whatever error you got, then you move on to the next stage. So a systematic approach will definitely ensure that the software entropy is not as high as it would be in an unplanned software testing manner. So, in simple words, testing means what are you testing, how you are testing, and what are your outcomes. So, why do you think knowing outcomes is important when you are? So, this is called as the expected outcome. The objective is not only to know what to test, but how to test, and while you are testing in the process, what you should expect and what you find, because the dissonance between the two will help you understand whether it's a defect or it's a natural activity of the software. So three pillars of software testing: what you are testing, so you need to specify how you are testing, and what are your outcomes, so that you can measure how your outcomes, expected outcomes and actual outcomes compare. So briefly, this is the process that follows, and I'll show you another way also in which software testing goes about. You basically analyze the project, product or service. You are designing a test strategy. You define the test objective. So what exactly you want to test. So for example, you have listed down your functional requirements. Okay. If you really read your functional requirements, and some groups might also want to test the non-functional requirements. So you really write the objectives of the test. Okay. Then you define the test criteria, whether it will be, in which kind of situation it will be successful, not successful. Resource planning, planning test environment. And these are quite detailed steps, but try to pick out the ones that are most relevant to you in the context in which you are operating for your software engineering project. So this is the basic template of sort of master test plan. So you have an introduction in which you describe the system to be tested, objective of the test plan, how you are testing it, and some supporting documents. The overall plan, some milestones, schedule and locations, and test cases, test scenario, test logs, the hardware that you require, the procedure control. Procedure control explains basically how testing is to be conducted. So basically giving directions in the testing situation in order to control all what the variables examined. So basically a flow of how the procedure of software testing will initiate and execute and things like that. It doesn't have to be precise at this juncture, but it has to be well thought after. So your thinking should be visible when you try to show your testing strategy, because the way your testing strategy flows will testify a lot about how you have understood the system that you're trying to develop. And on what, because there's a lot of priority also happening when you design your test strategy. What are the things that you want to test on priority and all these kind of things. So try to think in that manner. So this is a basic content for master test plan. Some of the groups might want to follow this, some of the groups might not want to follow this. That is entirely up to the groups, but the planning element should be there. Another way people can often talk about test plan is that they design test suites. So in this diagram, you have 3 test suites, and there is a test case, and then corresponding test script is there. So what exactly is getting tested and how to test it, and then test data is there. So maybe you can follow this kind of approach if it suits you. So and this is generally for not so complex projects. But the bottom line is that there has to be a test plan. As much as you worked hard for designing and requirements gathering and understanding functional requirements and non-functional requirements, I hope by this time you might have understood that there is no point in the phase of software development lifecycle when you can say, okay, now I can rest, now I'm fine, now everything is fine. No, even after developing, then maintenance is coming up. So it is like being on toes all the time, unless and until that project has, or the product has stabilized. So think of this thing and try to understand this in perspective of creating a test plan for the system that you are trying to create. So normally there are certain specific words like testing. We have talked about that there are two kind of testing: static testing and dynamic testing. So in static testing, basically you are not executing the code. The code is not running. In dynamic testing, however, execution of code is involved. Now you might ask how static testing is really done. So definitely you can inspect the code or walk through the code. You know, so and there are the other way to categorize testing is by manual or automated. So in this 2x2 matrix tells you about that if the testing is static and it is manual, then what you are doing is you are inspecting your code. Okay. If the testing is static, that means the code is not being executed, but it's automated, and that means you are checking the syntax. You are not really checking the functionality. Whereas in dynamic testing, and if it's manual, you are simply walking through the code and text checking. It's almost similar to understanding all the modules what you have written, a dynamic manner in which you are executing the code. Whereas if it's dynamic and automated, these 3 things come into picture: unit testing, integration testing, and system testing. So for smaller projects like program level things, inspections and walkthroughs might help. But when you're really working on some not so complex, but a system which has multiple modules, then unit testing and integration testing and system testing are done. And they are automated. So automated means, often when the code is written, code is also written how to test it. So while the execution is going on, the testing is also happening simultaneously. So this is something called as automated testing. Unit testing can also be manual. Okay, when you are actually manually testing the system. But for large softwares, in the code base, there are separate modules which have code for unit testing, integration testing, system testing. Why? Because every time a bug is fixed, the code is to be built again. The testing goes on automatically so that it will throw up an error if something wrong has happened. So remember, dynamic testing, static testing, and manual and automated testing. So inspections and walkthroughs, as I've already told, in which participants are manually examining the code for occurrences of well-known errors. There are certain disadvantages associated with it because you have to be really well informed to become a better inspector or of the code base that you are walking through. Okay, mostly you can check syntax, grammar, and some other routine errors, which might be more visible, when you are trying to sort of test your system in an automated manner. So, but inspection and walkthrough is basically suitable for small scale projects, especially programs that you have written. But these days, they're not so much followed unless and until you're not able to attach the root cause of the error that you are understanding or seeing, in that case you need to inspect the code and walk through it. Okay, and normally inspection and walkthrough is a very good activity if you're working in a team. We had something called as code discussions and code review in our previous company also, wherein we would simply walk through the code and read the code and try to discuss among each other what is happening. So that way is a good way to make each other familiar with the functionality of the code. So this is something that you can also do among your team members, so that if you have been working on separate modules, you inspect and walk through and are try to integrate your understanding. So that is also one of the ways in which you are, statically testing your system. So if in your test plan there was something called a static testing or dynamic testing, feel free to include it. Maybe you started off with static testing, but by the time the complexity of the project that you are developing increase, then you know that okay, static testing may not do. We need to go to dynamic testing. So it really depends on how deeply and how broadly you are thinking. On Wednesday's class, I will start discussing about dynamic testing, unit testing, integration test, and system test. I will try to show you an automated example of unit test while executing. So that way you will be able to understand what we are talking about, in these three main kind of dynamic testings which are automated in nature. So that is all for today. Hopefully, so I'll just briefly revise what we learned. We started our discussion with the objective of system testing. We got to know software testing in perspective by looking at certain examples. Hope you do not forget those examples, at least the message out of those examples, if not the particular details. Then we compared how the progress of a system and the amount of time required differ with the bad testing approach and good testing approach. I also briefly touched upon the importance of planning your software testing and shared some of the test plan mod, templates. Feel free to use them, or plan your strategy around that test plan. And talked about walkthroughs and inspections. In our next class, we will talk about unit testing and hopefully integration testing, the type of integration testing. Okay, in integration testing also we have something called as top-down testing, integration testing, and bottom-up integration testing. And we'll talk about system testing. And so, the taxonomy of testing is really vast, but I'll try to present the most relevant ones so that your mind is not clogged up with too many terms. So we will continue our discussion on Wednesday. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And if possible, can you keep all PPTs in the same some place? Like it's the page of the class is too long and